He said you two smell your own farts.
Welcome to Wasted Potential Podcast for another episode of Glass Half Full. I am your host, Ronnie, and my usual host, Shane, is not with me here this week. He's missing. Well, I think the literal definition of missing is someone has to be looking for you and misses you.
Oh.
So maybe he's not missing. No one's really thought about him.
Oh, that's how it is.
But instead, I have a guest that I am excited to talk to. That is a pleasure to have back on the podcast. Korey is here. Korey, tell us who you are, what do you do, and why are we here?
Hello, this is Korey. Sometimes people call me Kylo Ren memes, depending on the podcast that I'm on. I run a podcast called Big Dumb Movie, where you are occasionally a guest, Ronnie. We are here this time, though, to discuss a movie that I thought you would really like. So you and I have kind of discussed doing a glass half full episode on a movie that we can mutually agree on. This is one that you hadn't seen that I suggested. It's a Korean movie. It's a 2010 film called I Saw the Devil. Now, if you know it, you know that's kind of a notorious name among the kinophiles out there. But if you don't know it, well, I guess we'll describe it as we go, won't we, Ronnie?
Yes. I just have to say, what an excellent movie to recommend to someone. And I'm not sure what this says about you and I, about our relationship here, but
Oh, God.
I appreciate the recommendation.
This is the kind of movie that you cannot recommend just to anyone. Although I have done that. I recommended this to someone blind. My cousin, who is not into film the way that you or I are, Ronnie, and is not, I don't know, not like the podcaster type of personality, just, an average woman in her 20s, right? She posted on Facebook once, I need a Netflix suggestion. And at the time, this movie was on Netflix, and I suggested it. And she watched it, and she messaged me, and she just said one sentence. That movie was fucked up. That's all she said.
That should be the tagline of the poster for the movie.
Good call.
I guess to preface this, we were talking about The Nightingale on the your Big Dumb Movie. I think it was Face Off, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And I need to preface this, and there's a lot of jokes you make on this podcast that I enjoy rape films. I don't enjoy rape films. I don't enjoy it. This is the preface. Set this up. I watched this movie in utter terror, and I messaged you saying, "There goes my Saturday." But what I don't enjoy movies like this in the sense of, man, that was a fun movie. What I usually do it about is this is a challenging movie to get through, and if someone has the audacity to go down these dark realms of humanity, usually there's something deeper, or at least some cinematic craft behind it. Because if not, it's just a snuff film.
No, I agree. You said there's something challenging about it. I think that's very true. I think some people will dismiss a movie like this out of hand, right? Like if they know anything about what the story is going to give them or what they're going to see on screen, or even maybe just a synopsis, they'll be like, I don't watch movies like that. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't like to constrain myself in that way, although there are some genres I like more than others. But I think I can get into a movie like this because it uses some of the elements that we'll discuss later in an intelligent way, I think. And if it does that, Ronnie, then I think that makes for a good movie, much like The Nightingale does, right?
Yeah, and I just don't think, the terrible and horrible and just gut-wrenching elements in these movies shock you, but in the context of what they're talking about, at least for those two movies specifically, I'm not going to talk about just movies that feature tons of rape and terrible violence. I can't just put them all in the bag because they're not all equal. But at least for this movie, just to focus on this movie, I Saw the Devil. The terribleness is relevant to the characters and the plot, and although it's horrifying and not fun to watch, it wakes you up to some of the evils that this movie kind of really talks about.
Yeah, well said.
How we do this usually is I interview the person. Korey picked the film, so I will be interviewing him. My first question to kind of start us off is, Korey, when did you first see this film?
When did I first see I Saw the Devil? It must have been around 2013 or 2014. I had this recommended from a YouTube movie reviewer. It was on their, I think it was on their top 10 list of the year 2010. So I watched it based off that alone. And the environment that I watched it in was at home, by myself, late at night. So I watched this, it must have been like, I don't know, starting at midnight or starting at 1 a.m. in the morning. Super late with all the lights off. Just me and the screen, totally invested, no phone. I really got to let my mind sink into this movie in the first viewing, which I think is really a good way to do it. For this movie, and maybe any movie really, but especially a psychological movie. So I was really enraptured in my first viewing. And you know what? When I rewatched it to do this podcast, I did the same thing. I turned off all the lights and I made sure that I was fully invested because I didn't want to miss anything. I still probably did because there are times when there's a lot of details, but I think I watched it the best way you can.
So I watched this for the first time this Saturday. Side note, we're recording this the day after Easter, so happy Easter, y'all. If you celebrate it, this movie will be perfect for the family.
Yeah, absolutely. The rising of Jesus, has some similarities to things that happen in this movie. Probably, I don't know.
Yeah, it's the passion of the Antichrist.
Hey, that's good.
Thank you. So I watched it on Saturday. My wife was really sick. So what I should have done was let her comfortably sleep and sit. But I kind of started watching this in the room, and I had it down low, and I had it playing, and then all of a sudden I see her eyes open. She goes, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "A movie." So, and then you can't. I said, "Oh, I can go watch this in the other room." She goes, "No, I'm interested." I'm like, "Oh God." I was like, "Really? You're interested?" So instead of sleeping and resting, she and I watched this, and she goes, "Well, I was fucked." I'm like, "Yeah, that was something."
So your wife watched this with you, at least mostly?
Yeah, for the most part of it, because I was surprised. I thought she just kind of tuned it out, but she actually watched it. I didn't really ask her thoughts on it because I kind of felt the vibe of that was kind of horrifying. But we've seen tons of things. She likes musicals and fun stuff.
I know. Yeah, I heard that, and I got a lot of respect for her. I am also a fellow rent head, so make sure you tell her that. Us rent heads got to stick together, dude. I love Rent. It's funny because we're talking about I Saw the Devil on this podcast, but I just want to say, officially on the I Saw the Devil podcast, I fucking love Rent.
I don't get Rent. I don't mind musicals in general. I don't get it. But since we've been living together, I have definitely made her watch weird, fucked up shit. And she always goes, "Well, that was a well-made movie, but that's not something I ever want to watch again." I think that's where she'll fall on this. We're like, okay. She doesn't like gore. That's her thing. So there's scenes that get really gory. But she, for the most part, was fine with it. I was like, "Oh, dang, you're a trooper today." I'm surprised. I think I'm just a bad husband, but whatever.
Movie gore, no. Gore Verbinski, yes. Probably, I don't know.
Was he the one who did Rent?
No. Chris Columbus did Rent.
Oh, okay.
What did Gore Verbinski do? Pirates of the Caribbean?
Yeah.
That's more accessible, right?
He did The Ring. I tried rewatching The Ring, last year, and I fell asleep. I don't think it's a bad movie. I just don't think I was in the mood for it. But I remember loving it.
Yeah, if you rewatch it, you'll find that it's not the same movie you remember. It's one of those movies that fucks with your mind where your memory of it is different than the actual movie. Your memory of it's probably the last 10 minutes of the movie.
And I think also the time period of horror was different in early 2000s, and maybe that was just a game changer because it's the time of like Saw and stuff.
Yeah, Saw. That's a movie that's closer to this one in some ways, right? I think some people might conflate the two, maybe incorrectly, but there's definitely some similarities.
So incorrectly. There is so much wrong with those slated things because I don't like movies that are just awful to be awful. I need something deeper. And I think we'll get into that when we dive into these the deeper of the things that we actually enjoyed about the movie. I've never seen Hostel. Eli Roth doesn't usually interest me, and I don't think there's anything deeper there besides he just wants to show it. So I've never fully finished watching Hostel.
No, Hostel, like the Saw sequels, is just a complete waste of time, and it's gore for gore's sake. You know, it's what you would expect with those kind of movies. And I think some people, like I was saying, might compare that to this, but incorrectly so. I'm glad we agree on that.
Let's try to give a little bit of information. Maybe we can avoid the spoilers and kind of give us a little bit of context. Because if you've never seen this movie, we've kind of given you an idea of the content, but maybe not the plot. Maybe we can describe a little bit and see if it interests you, and then not dive in maybe too much to the changes. This is a 2.5 hour long movie, so a lot happens.
Yeah, a lot does happen in this movie, and I don't mind giving a synopsis. I'll probably go into spoilers later, though. Is that all right?
Sure. Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Synopsis of the movie I Saw the Devil. Let's see. Imagine the most fucked up thing you can possibly think of, and just hold that thought for a good 2 hours.
I wrote down, it wallows in misery.
Ronnie only chose this movie because it has rape and vengeance.
So this is what you would call a dark movie if you're going to describe it to a friend. So it's a very dark movie. It's a very gritty movie. I don't really like that word because people use it to describe Zack Snyder movies. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's necessarily always used appropriately. But this is a revenge story. And now there's a lot of movies that are revenge stories. The Nightingale we talked about is also a revenge story. But this movie is about a guy that I'll just describe, for the lack of a better word, as a serial killer. He kills people. He kills people brutally. We see him kill people brutally. We get to see what this guy is about in terms of his hobbies. And he kills the wrong person, basically. He kills someone who is connected to someone that works in the Korean government. This is a Korean movie, by the way. And I'll just call him a hero and a villain because I don't know how to pronounce anyone's name in this fucking movie. I'm sorry, Koreans out there. I'm sure it's easy, but I'm just dumb. So the villain is a serial killer. He gets on the wrong side of our hero, who's basically like a government secret agent, a total badass. And our hero is out to get revenge against the villain, and he does so over the course of a good 2 hours.
I think that's a excellent synopsis without giving away too much.
Thank you.
When you think of I Saw the Devil, a very nightmarish film, what's like the first thing that you loved about this film? Like why did you want to, besides to torture people to watch this movie, why would you recommend this? Like, what is your standout thing?
Well, we talked a little bit earlier about recommendations of this movie and how they work. Ronnie, you are the perfect person to recommend this movie to, because I know you appreciate art. There have been few occasions in my life when I've met someone and I was like, I need to get that guy to watch I Saw the Devil, and you are it. Which is why I know I've been talking a lot, but I'm anxious to hear what you think about I Saw the Devil. I know you usually ask, 3 things you like. But maybe I can kind of flip the table a little bit here. Like, what's one thing that you like?
The twist of this podcast is now I'm the interviewee.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you threw me for thing. My number one thing I wrote down that is super apparent to me is the cinematography is fantastic. The filmmaking.
Yes.
I love the shots. At the very beginning, there's a shot after he does something terrible. You see his lair. And I say lair because he's a monster. I don't say home or domicile or house. It's a lair. And then you get the shot, you look through the crack of this hole in the wall, like you're literally seeing a beast's cave. And in there you see just the terribleness of what lies beyond that threshold. It's just like this dark, sinister concrete, blood stains, chains, and absolute misery. And just how these long takes and shots of this are just excellently beautiful in a horrifying way. The lighting and shot composition is just so perfectly kind of connected that and I think it's kind of perfect being, I'm guessing your predominant language is English as well as mine. Like, seeing this as a foreign film, having a disconnect from not understanding the language, you have to really read the words, obviously subtitles, but also really read the language of cinema. And I think says so much. There's so much said, not said, but so much shown and not said in this film. and you, like you said, you have to pay attention and kind of pick up on the intricacies of characters and just how this director had a really dark vision and kind of brought it to life, and not just for the sake of being evil, but to like show what evil looks like.
Yeah, it's really well said. And my number 2 thing on my short list of 3 is actually the same thing. It's the camera work. This is how I listed it, but the cinematography essentially. But it's not really only that now that I'm thinking about it. It's just the technical filmmaking in general that goes into this movie. You mentioned the lighting. There's great angles at times. Seldom have I ever said that there's good use of a Dutch angle, but there is in this movie during the first kill, when the camera's on the floor and it's looking at the victim who is being hovered over by the perpetrator, like you said, like a monster. You can't understate the layer, right? This guy's like warehouse/house. It's like it's an unreal place. And it's almost like an unreal place for an unreal person. Like, how could this place exist? Right? There's like, it's so perfectly suited for the cruel acts that he takes out upon people. Like, it's like tailor-made specifically for his hobby of killing, maiming, and everything else under the sun.
Yeah.
There's a couple standout shots for me that happen in the movie. And I think we're going to probably go a little bit out of order. One of them is when the hero of the movie is in his apartment and he's looking at photos and he's trying to track down who the villain is. There's some potential suspects. The camera shows him inside his apartment from the exterior. The camera leaves the apartment. It pans away from the building, and then it tilts up to the night sky. And it travels and it lands somewhere else in whatever city they're in Korea. And it lands on top of the killer's next victim, who's this poor woman at a bus stop.
I love that shot.
It's amazing.
I was thinking what you're talking about. I was like, oh yes, I love it. Dollies up and it dollies down. It's a beautiful transition with trickery, but it just, he knows how to like, just keep it going. Don't cut it. Don't stop this, because it's got to keep going, because you have the juxtaposition of characters. I'm sure we'll get into later with the protagonist and the antagonist, kind of like the back and forth.
Oh, look at me. I'm making a podcast without Shane because he just says dumb shit. It's every day. Well, fuck both y'all.
Since we kind of like reverse the tables a little bit, can I ask you another question just to kind of like maybe set things up of how things go at the beginning of this movie?
If you listen to this podcast, Korey is now taking over the podcast. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. I can't help it. It's my role. It's my natural role.
Let's do it.
What do you think about how the villain of this movie spends his like Friday nights? Like, you saw this movie for the first time recently. It opens up with the villain and his victim. I mean, what was going through your head?
So I read the synopsis on Amazon, and I've heard of this movie, and I've heard all the things. I've heard it's excellent, but it's hard to watch. I'm like, okay. So I've added it to my, I think, like you said, it was on Netflix. It was on my Netflix queue for the longest time, then it left, and then I've seen it on Amazon. It's on my watch list, but you got to be in a mood for these things, or you have to have somebody says, I want to talk about this. So it kind of forces you to watch it.
Yeah.
How do I feel? I feel afraid for everybody living. I feel afraid for females in particular, just living a life of constant fear, because I don't know. I don't watch a lot of true crime or listen to true crime podcasts. I get the appeal to some people. I don't. I can watch things like this because there's like a disconnect between reality and fiction. But like,
yes.
I can't imagine. Like, I just don't like watching like real stuff, because it always reminds me this is what happened to real people. I know terrible atrocities happen to people all around the world, but there's a disconnect when it's like based entirely on fiction there. But I don't know what word could you use to describe. Do you want me to say what happens, or do you just want me to pick an adjective that would encompass
well, I mean,
evil?
Maybe we can break it down for anyone that hasn't seen it. Like,
yeah, sure.
Someone that is listening, a wasted potential diehard that isn't into the kino like we are, maybe.
So it opens up with a woman is trapped in her vehicle, and she's waiting for help, which adds an extra just sad cherry on top of this, is she's looking for help. And she's talking to her husband, and her husband's too busy to kind of use his intuition to be like, something's wrong here. So it just adds layers of just like sadness and helplessness. And then a man who's driving the equivalency of a Korean school bus pulls up and offers help, and then she shoos him away, and then he doesn't leave, and instead he unfolds his diabolical plot to beat her senseless, kidnap her, take her to his lair. I don't know. It doesn't show if he assaults her, but it's very well implied. Well, it says later, but it doesn't show anything in the beginning if he assaults her particularly in this instance. Do you know?
It doesn't show it, so we don't know for sure.
Yeah.
It's always a vague implication, but I think when he does it, you know.
Yeah. So it doesn't seem like he did. Maybe he did. I don't know. She's nude, which maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. Like why this movie. I had to take a break from this movie. I never take breaks, but something about this movie, I had to take a quick break and kind of come back 10 minutes later. But I know, right? Something finally hit me on this. But he basically just brutally murders her, even after she tells him something. She tries to appeal to his human side, and he kind of goes, meh, and then just kills her, and then disposes of all of her body except for her head and throws it out there. Well, he tried to dispose. It's kind of hard to tell what his normal routine is, because we know that he does atrocities. I'm not sure if he's trying to hide the head, but they find it in the lake later.
Yeah.
So that's not really fully clear.
It's very brutal very quickly, this movie. Like within the first 10 minutes, the brutality is so extreme. Like the way he abducts her, right? He smashes in her car windows with like a pipe, and then he gets in the car and he bashes her in the head multiple times with the pipe. And then it cuts to her being basically sealed in a body bag alive in his lair. And right, you're looking at this and you're looking at the lair, and he's just casually as you like standing over her, smoking, doing his little mundane tasks of tying up the chain. You know, he pulls her arm with the chain, extends it so it's held in place, and then just hacks it right the fuck off.
Yeah, I think that that word nonchalant, and I don't want to get too far ahead because I'm assuming you want to go here and talk about the antagonist, whose name I'm going to try here. It's Kyung Chul. I think that's they pronounce it. We'll call him protagonist and antagonist so that we don't show off our gringo-ness here, but he's just like hapless. Like it's a routine. It's just like you or I editing a podcast. This is a hobby that we do. This is like a passion we do on the side. And this is his fucking passion, is brutally destroying human lives. I laugh because it's so awkward and it's awful.
Yeah, and he does it to such extreme. Like he's basically the most extreme serial killer you could possibly imagine, is how this guy's depicted. And of course, throughout time, like people like this have existed. So it's not outside the boundaries of reality. He doesn't do anything supernatural. It's just the darkest aspects of humanity in one person, right? This dude is a sick fuck.
One of my things I find fascinating about this movie is it's a character study of evil. You're getting into the world of the most brutal serial killer that I think I've seen depicted in cinema, and it's just kind of like the layers of just, this is awful, but then as it progresses, you just get deeper and deeper, and the more you look, it's just really terrifying of just staring into like this dark abyss. And then you're just staring at it, and you're just seeing like a darker and darker shade of evil, and it's awful. It's not fun, but it's super fascinating, at least on a writing and a character level.
Yeah, I mean it's engaging despite the fact that these atrocities are being committed in the movie, and it starts with, I think, the antagonist, who in my notes I just have written down as hero. Hero and villain, the two main guys in the movie, right? The girl that gets killed is the hero's fiance, who actually was pregnant, and he finds out later. This guy is, I don't know exactly how to classify it. I'd say like a CIA agent equivalent of Korea, but it seems like it's a little bit even beyond that. He's like James fucking Bond, right?
Yeah, it says, okay, it's confusing because they call him detective at one time, but they also say special agent Soo Hyun. So he's something like, I was thinking almost like Secret Service, because he had like the earbuds, CIA maybe, or something like that. I don't know. It was something like a little higher up in the government ranks.
I mean, suffice to say, he's a complete like badass, and I think it might even be a misdirect that he's given the task like off the books by the police chief of finding this guy. But I think the misdirect is that you think it's going to be him hunting the villain. Like he has the photos of the potential suspects that the police are looking for, and he's kind of going through them one by one. And you think maybe it's going to be a little bit of a cat and mouse game. And I suppose it is in a way, but not in the way that you think. Because he finds this guy fairly early on in the movie. It's a long movie, and I think it happens about 40 minutes in. And you are rooting for the hero, right? I mean, at least up until this point. He finds the villain. I mean, he's in the middle of a pretty heinous act. I don't know how much detail we want to give on that, but man, it's really satisfying to see him just like beat the shit out of this dude. Like he's like fucking Batman in there, right? Like this dude is a ninja. And I think it's some pretty good action scenes in terms of like the fist fights.
Punch, punch, kick, punch, die.
It's not absolutely perfect, the action scenes. They're kind of Americanized. They feel very like Jason Bourne-esque, wouldn't you say?
They're very like kind of quick cuts, and they're very dramatized. It's not like kind of, well, I don't know. See, I've seen a handful of Korean films, and I always really like them for a lot of reasons we can go into later. But their violence is always kind of not over the top, but kind of put in a little bit of hyperdrive, kind of where it's like most characters are very fluid in their fighting. But I guess Americanized, right? Because it's like I'm thinking about like just, this is a stupid comparison, but I'm thinking about like The Mummy, and like obviously all those characters are like video game warriors and could do these crazy things. So I guess I'm not sure if that's a general movie thing or maybe it's an American kind of action thing, but definitely like the actions, like he's like you said, Jason Bourne or James Bond, like he's just like the perfect like martial artist who just like kicks his ass every time he meets him.
Right. Like basically no one can hold a candle to this guy in a fight. So, I mean, he completely takes out the villain, and that's good to see. But like where we get to see the plot is kind of like late into the game, because it's not just about the good guy catching the bad guy. Like he absolutely wants to make the villain of this movie suffer as much as possible. He even makes a promise at his dead fiance's, like, I think it's at her grave, or maybe when he's just by himself, kind of like praying out loud. He says, "I will make him pay for your pain." So he doesn't just want to kill him. He wants to torture him the way this guy tortures other people. And that's another aspect of the psychology, which is one of my 3 points that I noted is I love the psychology of this movie, right? You said the villain, you described him pretty well, but the hero becomes the villain throughout the course of this movie, doesn't he?
This is hard because this is not a knock on the movie, but I wrote down immediately when I figured out, I was like, oh, this is the best revenge plot ever. Because I knew this, like I said, it's not a knock, but I knew it was going to happen. Because I figured like this is not going to be the same cat and mouse back and forth. I'm like, at some point the shoe's going to drop. So I was like, I think what I like about this character is he does what almost anyone wishes that they could do, is use all of their powers to make someone feel like a victim. Take the aggressor and make them like a victim. I feel like anyone who wants justice or revenge wants that, right? We all want, if someone hurts us, even to like this terrible extent, you want them to feel that same pain, and we can identify with the protagonist because he wants the villain to feel that pain. But I was like, this shit is not gonna go on forever. At some point, it's gonna something bad's gonna happen, which I don't want to jump too far ahead. But I was like, yeah, 100%. When at a certain point he gets kind of too involved in his act of vengeance, and he makes two big mistakes.
Yes, he does. And I agree with you. It's like the knee-jerk instinctive reaction, I think. Especially if like someone you love is killed brutally, that you might want to do that to them as well. It doesn't make it right though, right? And I don't know how much you want to discuss the morality of it. Like, I think it's clearly wrong to go and do that to someone no matter what they've done, but you'd want to anyway, right? Because it's kind of like a perverted sense of justice.
Yeah, and especially if you know there's flaws in the justice system that they'll get out of, and it actually comes into the plot later. The villain realizes, I found my way around of being punished, or at least to the extent that the protagonist wants. I don't want to jump too far ahead to that, but this is interesting because I realized when I was doing a little bit of research on this, the director is Ji Woon Kim. Excellent. I haven't seen anything else by him, but I'm adding things to my list now, so thank you. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole of awful, terrifying Korean films, but I'm into it.
Good.
But the second writer is Park Hoon Jung, and that name was familiar to me because last year I tried to get Shane to watch this, so maybe you'll watch this and tell me if you like it. It's a movie called Midnight in Paradise. It's a Netflix film. He wrote and directed it, and the protagonists are very similar, where they have all the physical ability to enact revenge, but they don't have the mental ability to do it. They get so caught up in what they're trying to do, they don't think about the consequences of that. So I kind of like where your protagonist, a lot of American protagonists, the smartest, genius, most successful spy agents.
They are American after all.
But
We're all like that.
no comment. Not if you listen to this podcast. Sorry. I'm off a train of thought here. I'm being a dick. At least for this writer, he understands having all the physical aptitudes. You might not have all the mental aptitudes, and we see the protagonist in this fall over to that. He's so consumed by his desire to enact what he believes is revenge that he makes a terrible, terrible mistake, and then he fucks with the wrong person.
Yeah. I mean, he even goes excessive on people that are not the villain, right? Like when he's just going through suspects, he treats every suspect he meets as if they're the perpetrator of the originating crime of the movie, right?
Yeah.
Especially that first guy, that poor fucking bastard.
Yeah, I've even seen it. The protagonist is given 4 files on potential suspects, and the first one gets his for a medical word, testicles destroyed.
Yeah, with a wrench. He ties him to a chair and bashes his balls with a wrench. It's fucked, man. But you know what? I think they're setting up pretty early, like how this has affected the mind of our hero. Yeah. And he's way over the line, like from the jump. And
to kind of separate the protagonist and the antagonist, because obviously the protagonist kind of steps too far. You can track and understand the protagonist. We've all gone too far trying to do something. Maybe not this far. We've all gone too far trying to accomplish something, whether it's like...
I'm glad you added that caveat, because I was about to ask some serious questions.
Well, you know why I like these movies, because I can relate to it.
Yeah.
But like, you can track and understand or sympathize with what he's doing and why. The antagonist, no. He's not human. There's not a single moment of sympathy, as opposed to the protagonist when there's moments where they tell him, please stop, please end this, because it's not going to end the way you want it to. And he has these moments to turn back, and he doesn't. And that's when all hell breaks loose.
And the villain of the movie, it's not just the one kill at the beginning that sets him up as this evil monster that we keep describing him as. He picks off victims a lot throughout the movie, right? This guy's always working. even when he's being hunted and he knows he's being hunted by the villain, he's still taking people out in his old-fashioned way. Some of which is to get like counter revenge, right? Like the layers of revenge keep building.
Yeah.
And we see that unfold a lot throughout the movie. But this guy is, he's really something else. And we get to see each instance of that. And I guess it takes me to one of the other points. My final point that I have in terms of the three things I like, which is the brutality. I know that might seem a little strange to say that that's one of the things I like about the movie is how brutal it is. But it really is. This movie has balls, right? And it's not just that they're going to just show these things and that's it. Like you said with Hostel, where like they just show them and that's what the movie is.
이제 그만큼 데리고 놀았으면 그만해라 이 씨발 새끼야.
That was actually a really insightful line. He said, "You're both."
Everything that we see the villain do in terms of violence is, I think, to serve the character or to serve the story. And that's important. That really makes a distinction in terms of like how important it is to see something like that on screen and to really feel it. And they make you feel a lot of it.
I then kind of build off what you're saying there is that's what separates the characters. Both of them are committing acts of violence, but they're not even on the same level of brutality. And that's what separates them. Because by the end, it's not just two people seeking and using violence for some reason. One's for revenge and one is because. It reminds us by the end that they're not even the same species of human beings. And I don't know if you want to dive into, I don't want to get into spoilers just unless you're ready. But that's where I kind of want to go with that. The idea of like that brutality is so important because there's a difference between what, I don't know, like on top of my head, there's like two attempted rape scenes or full rape scenes. There's two murders he does. There's at least two implied rapes and there's another murder that we don't see. And there's also the terrible, harsh beating of the old guy, which for some reason adds an extra layer of just like defenselessness to it too. It's just, but his crimes are so uncomfortable, but that kind of fully goes into the story, and that's where we end on at some point.
Yeah, his crimes are uncomfortable to say the least. And I said this movie has balls. They show things that would not be shown on screen in a lot of cases. It also is a compliment to the filmmaking because the effects work is fucking flawless. It's very rare in this movie do I recognize a prop or a dummy or something that stands out as being fake. You can spot the difference between, I think, an over-the-top violent movie like this and an over-the-top Quentin Tarantino violent movie, right? Like something like Kill Bill, where there's a lot of intentional use in the Tarantino movie of where you can see prop limbs or blood spraying. I mean, it's clearly like a rig in someone's shirt. This movie really, really focuses on the realism. And again, it's just a huge credit to the prop people, the makeup people, anyone that worked in the technical area of this movie, really all together.
Yeah, there's only one I noticed. When they're in the mansion and he's beating, the protagonist is beating the antagonist with a metal pipe, or is it a wood? He's beating with something, and until he knocks him out. You can see it kind of bend at one point, but he's hitting the actor, and you can kind of see it bend, but I think they all kind of really wanted that authenticity, so they all took beatings. I don't know, I didn't do too much behind the scenes.
Yeah, it feels like that, right? It feels like everyone had to have taken a beating in this movie. The acting is just too good sometimes.
It really is, and it's just one thing I read about this on IMDb is the actor who plays the antagonist, who is also an old boy, which I'd never seen. I tried watching it after this because I was in a miserable mood, so I was like, let's just keep going. But Choi Min Sik, he is phenomenal, but he's so method that he felt like the character when he was walking around Seoul just by himself, like walking around Seoul sometimes. And then one woman who recognized him from the film was terrified of him. He had to like calm her down because like he just left such a big impact on some people. His character is just so realistic. It feels like that actor is a monster, which good for him, but also bad for him.
Let's go through a fake scenario here, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say that you're out and about and you end up in a building by yourself late at night. You get into an elevator. This guy gets in next to you. Now, you know who he is. You've seen this movie, right? But let's say he looks exactly like he does in this movie. And just for the sake of a good time, let's say he also has a black eye. He has the long hair, right? Let's say he just turns at you and just stares at you like the way he stares at people in this movie. Wouldn't you kind of shit your pants a little bit?
I'd hope to become that scene in Drive where I push someone out of the way and start kicking his head in. Yeah, no, I'm a coward. I would definitely be like, please don't.
I mean, that would kind of fuck with me.
For sure.
I got to admit, like, even though I know this man is an actor, I'd want to be like, I loved you when I saw the devil. But if he was staring at me, I would probably freeze. He's that good. He's extremely convincing, and he's not like a huge guy. He's not like a large, like, buff guy or like an intimidating physical presence. Mm-hmm. It's just that he's a great actor and that he can convey a crazy fuck pretty well, which is probably why he's, also old boy.
Well, and I think that kind of really sells into the character. Like, it's like, imagine this was twisted and like the protagonist was the evil person. You'd be like, oh, he's really fit, but it's more terrifying to have just some kind of schlubby, normal looking person. Not normal looking because like his demeanor is not right, but like he just looks like a random person you would see. And that's what makes it even more terrifying, is just like, I don't want to ruin it, but like a monster can look like anyone.
Yeah.
Because like he gets his ass kicked constantly by the protagonist, and he barely makes it out of some situations alive. But it doesn't matter what his physique is, because he's something more terrifying than physical prowess. It's just, he just has this aura of evil, and he just like embodies it so perfectly as an actor.
He really does. And I think we're like pretty much into spoiler territory now. I mean, we've spoiled some stuff already, so I'm going to go a little bit more heavily into it. There's a point in the movie after he's like wandering around and he's gotten his ass kicked by the protagonist, and he's like wandering along a highway, and he goes to like hitchhike a ride, right? And you know that it's not going to go well for whoever picks him up. We've seen that happen enough times. He's killed enough people. This dude ain't right. He gets picked up by, coincidentally, a taxi that's out in the middle of nowhere. There's a taxi driver, and then there's a passenger in the back seat as well. And these guys keep talking to him, and he's not saying a word. But he picks up on something that we then pick up on after him. Mm-hmm. And that's a credit to the filmmaking as well. But he can tell that these guys are crooks. There's some kind... I don't want to say those two guys are serial killers, but they're definitely criminals, right? They picked this guy up to get him, either to rob him or to kill him or something. And he fucks these guys up while the car is going, right? He has a screwdriver, and he's basically like repeatedly stabbing them both very, very quickly. But the thing that really caught my eye about that, aside from it just being a good scene and like a good bit of tension, is the camera work inside that cab. The camera is like doing 360s around the interior of the cab, and I honestly have no idea how they pulled that off. Like, I don't know what rig they could have used to make that camera trick work.
The only thing I can think of that's even close to it is, did you ever see Children of Men?
Yes.
It's a very similar kind of trick. I don't know which one came out. I know they came out pretty similar, but it's so fucking impressive what they did. Like, just like taking something as just like, I don't know, just a simple act of brutality and murder, but it's so like the back and forth, the movements, it's so beyond impressive. The lighting, the shots, and how it just could flow. It seems all so real. It's just so perfectly like shot and edited. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's like a masterclass of filmmaking. And again, the camera that goes like around them in this confined space. And it's like, I don't know. I still don't fully understand the placement of the camera, because like the camera's inside the car, like, and you can see everything as it goes around. So like, what, I don't know. It's just a great moment in terms of filmmaking anyway.
The only way I can think of how they rigged this was they built a larger dimension size of the car for this shot and just rigged it to go around almost like in a complete like 180 degrees so you can see what everything's kind of going on from that perspective of the camera. It's the only way I can think of is they expanded the car because so much movement by the actors and the camera is done in just split seconds, and it's breathtaking and terrifying.
You're probably right, and they must have used some kind of like forced perspective to like not give away the illusion of size in the space. But it is good.
And see, that's like the thing is why I love film as an art form is just like someone goes, I want to get this done. How do I get what I have in my head onto film? And then they task the full crew, but some of the best filmmakers that I've seen, and they make that shit work because it's like, we're going to make this work because I have a vision for this, and just using that like camaraderie and the artistry of people in industry who it's only for what, like 30 seconds, but they rigged all of this shit just for this one shot to show just not just a normal killing. They had a vision, and they got it, and I love it. It's so impressive to me just as a casual film watcher.
Yeah, it would have been a lot easier to like have the villain pull out his weapon, and then we see the outside of the cab and blood splatter, and then it stops and he walks out, you know? That would have conveyed the same idea, but it definitely would not be as memorable, and it just wouldn't be as quality filmmaking as we got.
No. I guess since we're in spoiler kind of territory now, the thing I really like is that the dichotomy and kind of the comparison between the protagonist and the antagonist. So at a certain point, the antagonist figures out how the protagonist is tracking him, which is using some kind of CIA, whatever the equivalency of the Korean CIA is, technology to track him and listen into what's going on. So then he figures this out, and then the protagonist makes a huge mistake by giving the antagonist a head start. So then he destroys the rest of the protagonist's life.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
He brutally beats up to a point of death his future father-in-law, right? Isn't the chief also his father-in-law?
It is, yeah.
And then I was sitting there audibly talking to my wife. I'm like, no, please don't. Don't let the sister come home. I'm like, please don't do this to me today. There goes my fucking Saturday. I was like, God damn it, I knew this was going to happen. I wrote that down. I was like, this is the dumbest revenge plot ever. Because this is going to backfire so fucking quickly. And it does. And the antagonist gets the upper hand and fucking destroys what's left of this protagonist's life. And he has a realization. And there's a lot of things that are really awesome about the scene when he breaks off the car door and grabs him off of the street. But the very last scene when the protagonist and the antagonist are having that face-to-face, and the protagonist is crying because, like, he is feeling his emotions again. He knows he can't beat him. He tells him, you've won. And he's trying to see if there's anything left in this antagonist. And man, this fucking actor, man, who plays Kyung Shul, this serial killer, he pulls off these like crocodile tears and cries, and then he has that snapping moment when he looks up at him and says, fuck you, get this over with. Come on.
Yeah, he's full of shit.
네가 나 여태까지 데리고 놓은 거 같지? 에? 적 까고 있네.
Is me translating Korean racist? Because you're both racist.
It's a really, really strong scene. I think it's a perfect moment to cap their relationship, because it is the last scene they share together. And when he is like crying and saying, please don't kill me, saying that to the hero, and the hero says, now do you realize what you've done to people? And then he just snaps out of it, and he's like, you know, he's full of shit. He's like, you can't fucking hurt me. I've won. He says that to the hero because he killed basically everyone that he loves in the most violent and brutal possible way. Like, even the chief of police, who's the hero's potential father-in-law, I think he lives, but he gets his eyes bashed out with a dumbbell, like a little 5-pound dumbbell. So that man's life is ruined. Both his daughters are dead.
Yeah, and he presumably watched his last daughter get raped and murdered.
Yes, maybe with his one good eye.
Yeah, all like the Killing Joke, basically. Watching most awful things unfold in front of you.
It does at times feel like a Batman and Joker relationship to me. Like if like Batman was a little bit crazier, maybe a lot crazier.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy is like the real world version of the Joker, right? He's he's less funny, less silly, just all sick and twisted, just like all those dark elements.
This is what a real life Joker would be, because like Joker's always kind of like, he's a psychopath and a serial killer and all these things, but they always have to kind of tone him down a little bit because he's the most interesting thing about the Batman like universe. But this is like a real life where there's nothing redeemable, because this is where that title comes in. Like, I saw the devil, and I was wondering, like, well, who's the devil? Because I was thinking in my head, because I haven't seen the movie before, I'm thinking, does the antagonist so terrified of the protagonist, he's like, I finally saw the devil who's actually, like, scared me. And it's not. It's the protagonist saying that, like, I've actually seen evil. I've seen something that cannot be redeemed, and there's nothing to do. I should have done this a long time ago, is put it out of its misery, because if I let it keep roaming, it's just gonna tear down the world.
I've always been like a vocal proponent of like even the worst people, you know, something they can generate something positive from their life, you know, something that will contribute to humanity, which is kind of like my, I guess, vague like anti capital punishment argument. But this movie kind of like counters that in a big way, right? It says not everyone has any ounce of good in them, right? Like this guy, there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing, except for one thing that I think I'll talk about at the very end. But even that is like a potential. Like that's not even really something they explore thoroughly. So yeah, I definitely agree with your assessment on that.
And I think that's what the whole, like I said, the word very specifically at the beginning, challenge. You gotta challenge me with something. You can't just give me violence for the sake of violence. You have to challenge me to be like, man, is there actually a point when someone is not worth saving, or there is no reason to save something that kind of wakes you up? Because the protagonist has a big fucking wake-up call of realizing like he's never dealt with this before, and his plans for revenge are completely ruined because no matter how far he pushes himself to be brutal and violent, he can never be on that same level as Kyung-shul, this monster, this demon, this devil. He can never be that far. And I think that's his saving grace at the end, is he realizes, I can't do this. This is not me. So then he kind of rigs an ending for this guy, and then he walks away in tears, kind of feeling everything. And that's the whole point, is he feels, while this monster doesn't feel. He just murders, rapes, and takes from people without a second thought. And even deeper to the psychology is he blames them. He says he blames women. He has like this incel moment where he's like, oh, women are all bitches and they deserve this, and they don't do what I'm supposed to do, therefore I'm gonna take from them. It's like, oh my god. This fucking manifesto monster here is like saying, yeah, who's to tell me how old I should love someone? I'm like, oh my god, stop. Like, this is the worst thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like some of this was definitely taken out of reality, right? Like, there have been those crazy fucks that have done horrible things and said similar things.
At the end of this, you're just feeling like, I need to take a shower. I need to go help, support children and somewhere and give them money, because it takes you to dark places, and it kind of makes you just go, oh, goddamn.
I mean, the hero, I don't mean to counter what you said, because it's a perfect synopsis, I think, of the conclusion of this movie. But the hero has done some things in this movie that have beyond crossed the line. He's done some really bad shit. For example, there's a character in this movie, maybe we'll spend a little bit of time talking about, who's like a cannibal. And the way he ultimately ends this guy is so fucked, man. When he visits him in the hospital, after he's already had his encounter with him, and he's already like kicked the shit out of him and hurt him very badly, the hero seeks this guy out in the hospital to get a little bit more information. And when the cannibal guy talks shit to him, the hero basically just rips his jaw off his face.
Let's put a smile on that face type of thing.
Yeah, who's the Joker now? This guy's the Joker guy. He said the line. I mean, come on. But the cannibal guy, what'd you think of him?
It's kind of hard to really analyze the other characters because there's so much with the main antagonist to kind of pull in, but he's like the other end of evil, where like the things he's doing are just as heinous. He kidnaps girls and eats them, and it kind of drives him insane, and that goes into like the maniacal thing because the antagonist never sits there and like laughs. And I don't know, do you think he relishes what he does, or is it just kind of a thing he has to do, the main antagonist? Do you think, like, because like obviously the cannibal, he loves eating flesh of humans, he likes it, gets off on it, and he says, I need to go prepare my next meal, implying the audience that's most of his day is just preparing his next meal. Do you think the main antagonist actually revels in what he's doing?
That's a very good point. So I was thinking about that actually. Like, at what point in the kill does the main villain get his sense of euphoria that he's seeking for all this, right? Like, he's doing all this because he likes it, right? He's a sick fuck. He likes to torture people in very sometimes abstract ways, but I think it's right before he kills them is his happy moment, right? Because he bashes someone in. I think he enjoys that, sure. But when he takes someone back to his lair and he's done setting everything up, he takes a couple seconds to just look at them right before he kills them. And I think that's what he does it for. That's his moment. Did you notice those moments when he would like just hear them out for a second and then just stare at them and then he does the kill?
Yeah, there's the scene that makes me kind of, this is a scene that haunts me. I had to take a break after, actually. The scene when he's with the nurse, when he's raping the nurse. Oh God, I just say the words. Fuck. Welcome to this fun podcast. So he's telling her and trying to rationalize what he's doing to her, saying, my night was screwed up. If you do this, it won't hurt as much. Try to take some pleasure in this. And like, there's that sick thing where I think he revels in the power. And I think that's what they say about most rapists is it's not the climax. It's the, I can control you. And I think that's the reality of him justifying, kind of controlling it. And he has those moments where he's reveling in justifying why he's doing this. Like there's that pleading moment where she says, please don't kill me, I'm pregnant. And he goes, and then just does it. Like he gets that sickness out of all of that. I totally agree with, like, it's those quick moments right before the brutality is he revels in it. So I don't think the act itself, I think it's just like the moment right before, like you said, I'm enjoying this because I control you. And then the rest of it's kind of like, okay, now I got to clean up.
Yeah, I guess that's the moment where he's in the most control.
Ugh, God, I feel fucking sick. Which it doesn't happen, man. After that scene, the brutality of how he treats that nurse, and then what the protagonist does to like punish him, I'm like, I need to go take a break for a second and then come back to this. And these things don't get to me. I'm desensitized. This movie got to me.
Listen here, this movie is incredible, unlike these two cocksuckers reviewing it.
Yeah, it has that effect, that's for sure. And I don't want that to turn anyone away by itself, because I think that if people are listening to this and they haven't seen it, they should check it out. But they should also be warned, right? They should know like what this movie is, and maybe not recommend it to their cousin without any warning, like I did.
I honestly appreciate that because, well, I don't appreciate it for this movie, because this movie, you know what? Take that fucking back. I recommended Bone Tomahawk to so many people. Have you seen Bone Tomahawk?
Oh, hell yeah.
Fucking love that movie because it's a cinematic masterpiece, but it's also that point when shit goes sideways, and I love when my friends go, what the fuck? They text me back and say, what the fuck am I watching?
Yeah, when shit gets real in that movie, it gets really real. But for the most part, Bone Tomahawk is not that. And I've heard people that are close to me, people that I podcast with sometimes say that Bone Tomahawk is mostly a torture porn. And it's really not. It's a pretty slow burn Western drama for the most part. There are horror elements in there, and then they get very horrific at times, but I don't think it maintains that. Like, it happens pretty abruptly at the beginning and pretty abruptly at the end, and then a couple times throughout.
These movies are totally different. This movie, like I said, it wallows in misery from start to finish. There's some like black like comedy and dark humor in this, but it is so sparse. Like, you don't have time to make jokes because everything that's happening around you is so horrifying.
I wanted to talk about a couple of the comedic moments of this movie. There was just two that I thought were kind of funny, and I don't even know if they were supposed to be honest. It's really hard to tell if any comedy is intentional in this movie whatsoever. It's that bleak. But when the cops find the guy who got his balls bashed in with a wrench by our hero, they ask him, they say, "Hey, who broke your balls?" That's so fucked up, dude. Like, they're just like trying to get information out of him without any like modicum of sensitivity whatsoever.
Yes, and I think it's the bluntness of kind of Korean culture, because like there's a scene when the protagonist is talking to his boss, and he's like, "How much time do you need?" 2 weeks. Do you want more? We need you, but we can give you more. It's just kind of very like, let's get on to the next thing. We don't have time for your feelings right now. So yeah, but I think that the bluntness of how he says it is humorous. I wrote that down. That scene made me laugh, and I was like, oh, it's fucked up, but I'm laughing at this.
There's another scene where the hero is in the cannibal guy's house, and everyone's kind of hiding from each other, and there's a great buildup of tension to see like who's gonna get who. But the hero is like kind of peering around a corner, and there's a woman who's, I guess, the partner of the cannibal guy. I don't know his name. I don't really know any of their names. But she sneaks up on the hero and she like slices his arm. It's like the one time that he gets nicked by someone when he gets caught off guard. And he lays this woman out in such a funny way. Because like he punches her so wildly that many of his punches just miss. And he's just like swinging at the air. This guy's really just like, have you ever seen like a fight with like someone who's just like wildly flailing their arms? Like, he's doing that to her, and he misses a lot of them, and it's funny.
And I think it's because, like you said, he got caught off guard. He's so meticulous, and everything's planned out. This scene is actually a point in the plan where his plan falls apart, so he's kind of like winging it, and he's so caught off guard that because he had no idea she was in there. He kind of just like I think it's 3 punches. I think 2 land, and the last one it's a wild miss because he's so caught off guard, showing that like maybe it's like a foreshadowing. So like his plans are slowly kind of unraveling. Maybe it's a thing that's kind of happening slowly. But like it's like, and it's like, it's like it's brutal, but it's so kind of out of character. It feels maybe it's kind of humorous.
Yeah, I can't help but laugh when I see it. I have a feeling that that's like meant to like pull a laugh out of you, to kind of like ease the tension before like leading you right back into it.
Any other positives before I try to see if we can find anything to change about this phenomenal movie?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the cannibal guy a little bit more, because I think he's a great bit of world building, right? The fact that the most hardcore serial killer of all time, the villain of this movie, he goes to a friend when he's at his lowest point. When the hero has been stalking him and cutting his Achilles tendon and just mercilessly beating him with pipes, he goes to a friend to stay the night. And his friend, of course, is also a serial killer like him, but he has his own gimmick, right? It's like they have like a serial killer Legion of Doom, and they even fucking talk about it. And I forgot that they talked about it until this recent rewatch, when they say something like, do you remember when we had all the guys together and we were going to change the world? They say something like that, and I'm like, there's more of these fucks. Like, each one has their own gimmick, like they're a fucking Batman villain. It's fucked up. And 1, it's great world building, and 2, it really makes you want more with this movie. Like, it makes you think like, okay, like, where are the other guys? Like, there could be other I Saw the Devil movies, and I really don't mean to like reach for sequels. I know a lot of people hate that. Just like, let a good movie be standalone. But there's room in this universe. That's all I'm saying.
Deep within a bleak and dismal swamp, hidden beneath its murky waters, lies the headquarters of the most sinister villains of all time, the Legion of Doom.
The meeting will come to order. The Legion of Doom is now in session. It is the purpose of the Legion to align our infamous forces against the powers of good and defeat them, leaving us, the rulers of the world.
Well, it even adds more to the horror, because this movie is every genre besides, I think, science fiction, and romantic comedy. It's like the horror, the beginning is very much a horror, then it kind of delves into more thriller action. But this scene also kind of brings us back to that horror. You mentioned the tension there. But I like how you said that, like, there's a world here that makes it even more fucking terrifying, that there's more people out there like this. And just in this small section of, like, Seoul, Korea, there is, like, these people know each other. And they have connections, and like that is a terrifying world to live in.
Yes, absolutely. They do set up that the main villain of this movie was like, he's like the top of the food chain among them. He kind of like puts the other guy in his place, right? And establishes his like rank as the alpha between them pretty early on.
I even think he says, doesn't he call himself a god? Or does the other guy call him a god at some point?
Something to that effect.
Yeah, like he sees himself as like, I am above everything and everyone, even with my quote unquote peers, because he doesn't really have a high regard for him. I think he treats him, the cannibal, as more like a place to hide out. And this is my one question that confused me. It seemed like the cannibal and his lover or sister, whoever the hell that is, it seems like at first this was their house, but then he tells the girl that he's trying to chop up, you were being very rude by not letting us in. So it almost seemed like they were squatting. So then how the fuck did our antagonist know he was there? Unless like he, did like follow it on Facebook. He says, hey, I'm at this location. See you later. I don't know.
This is 2010. It'd be a little early for that. My impression is that he picked up that girl and her family from their house and brought him back here. Like, you know how the main villain of this movie, his thing is primarily like getting people on the road. I feel like the cannibal guy goes to people's houses.
Oh, okay.
And if like they don't let him in, he probably like breaks in, takes them out, brings them back here where he has his whole setup and he has his dogs. I think this is his house.
Okay, so then I was thinking about that. I'm like, okay, if this is their house, they're like independently wealthy. And I was thinking like, what fucking occupation do they have? And I'm like, it's got to be like mommy and daddy money. And it's like they gave him money, so then like these two rich brats can just be awful because they never learned how to actually like earn a living, maybe. So that's when my brain went to wild, like, world building. Like, how the fuck did they get this big old mansion? What day jobs do they have?
Yeah.
But if cannibal guy is constantly cooking up things, I'm sure it's mommy and daddy money.
Yeah, well, they probably run Korean Walmart. So,
and they're literally eating people. It's a beautiful metaphor. Anything else positive before I make you do the sacrilegious thing and see if you can give one thing to change?
I don't think so. Not for now. If anything comes up, I'll bring it up anyway, though.
Of course. So, Korey, I know this must hurt since this is a movie. I'm not going to say it's dear to your heart, but at least you respect it enough that you want to talk about this so badly. What is one change you'd want to make about the film? Or if there's no changes, tell me why it's so perfect.
Well, this movie is actually dear to my heart. It's probably in my top 10 favorite movies of all time, Ronnie. So I really do like this movie. I haven't seen it as many times as some of my other top 10 movies, but it that has its own reasons, right? It's a kind of a hard watch. You have to be in the right mood, in the right place, probably alone, because you'll never be able to convince someone to watch it with you, etc. So if not the top 10, top 20, I do love this movie. So if I'm going to change something, I think what we need to do, call up Michael Bay. Have him cast Rob Schneider as the hero. Cast Jared Leto as the villain. And just give us a good old American remake of this thing. That's what needs to change. The whole movie. We want an American remake of it. We need some helicopters. They can be in New York. The government can't stop this guy. They got to send in Rob Schneider, and he's the only one that could do it.
I said sacrilegious thinking that I would offend you by saying make a change, and now you made it sacrilegious by
Yeah.
mentioning like one of the most disdainful actors. I don't hate Michael Bay, I just don't enjoy his movies. They're not my type of movie. And then Jared Leto I don't have a problem with personally. I know people have issues with him, whatever. Like his acting abilities. His personal life is a different fucking story. I'm talking about his acting abilities. I think he's a
You
good
mean
actor.
cult leader Jared Leto? That Jared Leto? He has a cult, by the way.
Yes, I know about that. He looks like a cult leader, like his whole like character in Blade Runner. I'm like this fucking guy definitely leads cults on his off time when he's not
Without
acting.
a doubt, he leads cults in real life. All right, I got two things for real. One of them is not within the text of the movie at all.
Mm-hmm.
So this is outside of the movie, but you see it on the screen. And you probably forgot about this, but before the movie starts, we get to see the production companies.
Mm-hmm.
There is a production company called, I think, Showbox. And their animation that they have and sound effects that go along with the animation do not coincide with this movie whatsoever. It's like a silly, like little bouncing emoji character guy, and it has Looney Tune sounds.
Showbox.
And it does not look like it will go with this. It looks like a fucking VeggieTales like production company animation. Like it looks stupid as fuck.
I was thinking the exact same thing. I was thinking VeggieTales. It's so funny that you and I both know that specific.
Yes,
like
Barbara
reference.
Manatee's gonna come on at any moment.
Oh my God, Korey! we talked so much that we're getting into such specific cartoon singing vegetables.
I'm
about
the new
Jesus.
Shane. Half in the bag. Half in the bag.
I love
God
so
damn it,
much.
Ronnie.
Oh my God! I found a new Cartman. Oh God, that's awesome.
I can't do a Shane, okay? He does the impression, but you know what I mean. A lot of yelling.
Fuck both y'all.
What's your second thing that's maybe more sincere, but probably not?
So the second thing I think that would help this movie, maybe, or I'd want to change, maybe, again, is there could be an extra scene. Now, there's a couple versions of this movie, apparently. We watched what I think is known as the international version on Amazon Prime, which has the extended brutality, and it's, for the most part, the director's true movie. But I think there could be a scene added, maybe early on, maybe midway, somewhere, where the villain interacts with his son. And we didn't go into this specifically. It's kind of a big spoiler. But when the hero eventually kills the villain, he doesn't directly kill him. He sets him up in a Saw-style death trap, right? Underneath a guillotine, a giant blade that's going to behead him. And it's rigged up against a door. So if someone opens a door, this blade will fall down and kill the villain. It will behead him. And what the hero does is he calls the villain's family, who he did track down, and apparently the only one that the villain has a relationship with is his 10-year-old son. He calls the family over to this place. They, of course, walk in and open the door, thus triggering the mousetrap blade to fall down and behead the villain. Which, by the way, we see and looks excellent in terms of just filmmaking. It's very clear and it's very pristine on film. Doesn't look fake. But anyway, there's an implication that the villain does have a relationship with his approximately 10-year-old son. I think it would have been good to show them to have one scene together, because ultimately I think if the villain has any weakness at all, it's the kid. It's just not said directly. It's kind of implied.
Yeah, there's a moment when he's screaming, "Not you, don't come in here." Like, that might be the one weakness, but he's not a good dad because he doesn't take care of his kid. Like, his kid has his cell phone number and I think knows where he lives, maybe,
He
because he
does.
asks him. So there's at least that, but what kind of fucking father takes your kid to your rape and murder lair?
Oh my God, that's such a good point. The kid knows where he lives because he's probably brought him there sometime. So if I'm going to expand, I would say like maybe the villain is grooming the kid to be like him, right?
Mhm.
And that was not really a sense of love in the way that any normal human would think. But that might be the closest thing to him, if in fact that's even happening. I'm kind of just going down the speculation road now. But if the villain is grooming the kid to be like him, to become the serial killer that he is, to him, that's probably his like sick and twisted version of love, maybe.
Ugh. Gross. Going off of that, I don't really like that ending. I don't like that the protagonist rigs this thing and then has the guy's family and kid watch him die. Because it doesn't really hurt the antagonist. Like, it hurts him maybe in the last couple seconds, but it really kind of fucking traumatizes these people. So I don't really think I like that kind of ending. I think when you have, like, an animal, you just put it fucking down. Just shoot him in the head. Like, he doesn't deserve, this jury-rigged ending there.
Yeah.
The only thing is, it does create that moment of fear for him for a second, but at that point, the protagonist can hear it, but what does he get out of it by the end? So didn't really care for that ending so much. I like the scene afterwards when he's walking and he has those emotions, so it kind of sells it. The ending's fine for me, but I was like, this is a weird kind of like you said, Saw, Jigsaw type of thing.
Yeah, so I think that for both of us, like the very end is like I don't want to say it's a bad part, but at least it's the part where we have like maybe some minor issues with, or some things could be reworked slightly in how it unfolds. I liked your take about the psychology of it a lot. I really did. I was kind of in the mindset that like the hero was kind of becoming this guy, right? He was kind of like becoming as sick and as twisted as the villain in enacting his own revenge against him. But you're right that like he pulls himself out of that by the end. Like after the job is done, he feels everything all at once, and like that's where we roll credits.
Yeah, and I think that's what redeems him to an extent.
Yeah.
Any other final thoughts on I Saw the Devil? Any other thoughts there, or any other kind of selling points? Because if you listened so far in this podcast, you're probably like, I don't want to watch this because I want to be happy.
Man, there's so much nasty shit that happens. Not all of it is violent. Some of it is just a man digging through his own feces. So if you're into that, this is the movie for you. The last thing I got to say is just how satisfying it is every time in the movie, and it happens multiple times, where the hero catches up with the villain and just relentlessly beats the brakes off him. Very satisfying, because we see who the villain is and we know he deserves it.
Yeah, and then this filmmaker's like, oh, you're enjoying that? Well, guess what? The point isn't to feel catharsis from revenge. The point is you can't do this because it leads you down a road that you can't be evil. So it's like, it almost like is self-aware to realize, oh, you're enjoying this revenge? Well, guess what? This is not going to end how you want it to end. I'm like, oh, you son of a bitch. you're a good filmmaker. You're trying to teach us something as opposed to just get our kicks on watching this guy wail so satisfyingly on this like monster.
Yeah, the layers in this are great. And it's in the text of the movie, it's in the technical filmmaking, it's really in every aspect of this movie where there's like some form of engagement that is in service of the overall story. I mean, you even talked about the lighting early. The lighting is fucking cool in this movie. The bright yellow that we'll see on the villain's face in his lair is like a good touch. Just a lot of small stuff. I just fucking love it.
Well, a lot of it's at night, and a lot of it is just like it's so perfectly like lined up. Like the shot composition with that lighting is so well done. I love I don't love it. The first scene when the credits are rolling, when he's driving the snow and the lighting from like the street lamps, and like how the his fiance is lit in her little van there, which is like a terrifying spotlight of what's gonna happen. God, for like setting up the stage, but so Well done. So for me, if you can handle the darker aspects of like humanity and seeing it, there is an excellent point and theme behind this film, and the acting is superb, and the direction I think that's my number one, is the direction of it. But there's so much going on. It's not for everyone, but if you appreciate film and you have a strong stomach, it's totally recommended from my perspective.
Absolutely.
So, Korey, thank you so much for sharing this movie. And I know I've made jokes, but this is definitely a movie that is going to stick with me for many, many reasons. Positive and negative ones. Absolutely.
Many sleepless nights will be had over this movie. You can't forget it. That's for sure.
And now as I sit here trying to wrap up this podcast, I realize usually in my glass half full episodes, like I usually splice in content from the film, but it's a Korean film, so the language won't translate, and all the scenes you talk about involve brutal murder. So Korey, as you wrap us up and once again tell us where we can hear more of you, can you recommend to me how you think I should, and how and what should I cut into this podcast so it's not just you and I talking for an hour and a half?
If there's anything that this podcast is lacking, it's Shane. And it's Shane yelling. So I hope that in between our talking points, you just edit in some good old-fashioned Shane screams. Because, man, the listeners are going to miss him. I love Shane. He's great. I think he's really funny, by the way. I'm just kidding.
Oh, my God.
I don't know, man. There's a lot of Asian women screaming for help in Korean. So maybe you could just have that like overlaying with our audio tracks, kind of like accentuate the points.
So if someone's listening at work or driving, someone goes, "Oh my God, they're murdering someone in their car right now."
Yeah. It's not us. It's the movie, I promise. Big Dumb Movie is my podcast. It's a podcast that you come on sometimes. Even Shane's been on that podcast. It's a collaborative effort where we discuss mostly 90s movies and big dumb movies of all kinds. We talk about your RoboCops and your Terminators and your Batmans over there at Big Dumb Movie. So if you like that kind of stuff, and if you like nostalgia, because we love us some nostalgia over there, then I think you should check out Big Dumb Movie. We're on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out. Let us know what you think.
Find him on social media. He's been extremely helpful to us, giving us ideas, or just coming on and making us laugh by joining in our Spawn podcast. So check that out if you want to hear Shane and I yell at each other while Korey sits there awkwardly like a child listening to his parents fight.
What have I gotten myself into? God damn it.
But thank you so much for being here, Korey. If you're listening, appreciate it. Follow us, subscribe, all those things. Patreon. If you have extra money that you don't want to give to poor children, want to give to drunken adults, give it to Shane and I. We appreciate it. And then follow us social media. We're now on YouTube, so subscribe, like, comment. You can tell us terrible things on there. And side note, fun thing for us, if you are interested in applying for the Woodsboro Sheriff's Department, I'll be posting up a job application for you to fill out, so you can perfectly fill that out and give us some comments so I can read it on a podcast. I got an idea coming up. But thank you, Korey, for being here. Thank you for sharing this film. Check it out if you have a strong stomach. Go fuck yourself.
Oh, you thought you could get rid of me, huh? Well, guess who's here? I'm in every fucking cast. You big dumb bitches.
Really quickly, as we're still recording. So I don't think you probably haven't heard it yet. The last podcast we did today was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And I tell Shane that you invited me to be on, but I couldn't make it. He throws a bitch fit. An absolute bitch fit about it. He gets so mad. And it's so fucking funny because I tell him, like, dude, I swear, if you were on social media, he would probably invite you to shit too, but I'm literally the only contact person. But he gets so bitchy about it. I'm like, why is no one seeking me out? How are they gonna fucking find you? They're not on this.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to contact working title to get a hold of Shane, wouldn't I?
They don't even have any social media. They have nothing. So it's like I don't know how you think people are gonna actively find you when they don't know who you are, you fucking idiots. And also I didn't tell Shane about this podcast, so it's gonna come out. He's gonna be mad, so I appreciate that.
Oh, nice.
That's what I just love, is just pissing him off, and he gets mad when she has no right to, because he does nothing for any of his podcasts. Love you, bud.
Don't let Ronnie fool you. He's boring. I write all his work. It was Ronnie's idea to watch Halo.
The more I produce podcasts, the more the more I'm envious of the people that just like get to participate and then listen to the completed episode with like edits and like, you know, it being disseminated on all the sites. Like it's all just done and they get to listen to it.
Yeah, and like for me, I do a lot of editing at night when my wife's asleep. So then I'm just like,
Same.
God damn it, I lost like 2 hours of sleep for dick jokes and bleeping out like slurs and terrible words you shouldn't be saying anyways.
Yeah, I know. I know how long the glass half full episodes take to edit just by comparison, because those are the ones you add the clips in, and man, clips adds so much fucking time.
You know, the irony was I'm really busy at work, so I'm very particular about when I have to edit. So I actually pitched this idea for Glass Half Full to Shane to save me time, and not knowing, because I thought, oh, they're shorter, not knowing the fucking clipping of the videos. I'm like, this is the part that sucks the most, because your guys' podcast, you have it for like fucking, ours is 3 hours long. I'm like, Jesus. Like for me, usually it's like twice or 3 times as long as the audio recordings are. It's how long it takes me to edit. So for that shit, you have 4 people in 3 hours. I'm like, God damn, that's terrible. At least for our commentary tracks, I can just hit play. I have to move some things here and there and splice in a couple of things, but that's so much easier. So the irony is I'm just giving myself more work.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, but once you've like done a good edit and you've finished it, it's like an art form, right? It's like you've created a thing. Like that's the way I look at it. It's like, I feel like it's my baby. Like I'm so proud of a completed podcast. Like it's taken so much work to schedule everyone, and then to get people here, and then to work out the technical issues, and then to get the levels worked out, and then record, get everyone's files, mash them together, level them out, add the clips, publish them. I mean, it's just so much fucking work that like I'm just so glad when I finished it, man. It's a very satisfying feeling to be done.
I'm just throwing shit at the wall and have no frame of reference what the fuck this movie is. I am just saying things to insult you both.
I think when you make it, it's an art form. I think when I make it, it's like corralling a bunch of fucking animals and just sounds and screaming, and then it's like, why do I spend 6 hours trying to make
half in the bag?
Why do I spend 6 hours trying to wrangle and make cohesiveness out of my friend and I drunkenly screaming at each other, and you throw in Hobo Dan to be a third person to also just drunkenly scream? Like, why am I doing this with my life? But I guess in the end, I make myself laugh. So
I got that face-off clip when you were like super drunk, like it was like late in the podcast. I was like, oh, this is good. They're like audibly drunk.
Behind the scenes, we haven't seen each other in a long time, so we were catching up, and that whole day was a drunken mess. So that was the biggest issue, was we started the day drinking, and then we had the great idea to podcast and drink more. So we were already toasted, so I'm surprised the audio even turned out. And then the point when you clip it, it's so obnoxiously noticing that I'm so trashed that I'm just like, oh God. So I'm sitting there editing it like, this is embarrassing, and I will never get hired again for another job if anyone finds this. But it's also the stuff that makes me laugh the most. So whatever.
I actually grabbed that part because that's when I laughed out loud when I was listening to it. So I was like, this will make a good clip.
And what's also weird too about podcasts is like knowing whether or not you have to say to yourself, is someone else going to laugh at this? Because me and my friend, like mostly me, because we were both gone, but he's always drunk, so he kind of can hold it better than I can. I'm not always as drunk, so like it's audibly noticeable when I'm like slurring and screaming. Like, is that funny to other people? And then when it just so happens to fall upon the dumb, just like kismet of like Glenn Close being in these two movies that Shane just pulled out of his ass, which isn't even that impressive, but when you're drunk, it seems impressive. And we're just crying because it's so stupid, and the reality is it's just so dumb. Is that even translatably funny to anyone else?
It is, man. It is. It works.
I'm lonely. I don't want anyone to invite me on their podcast. Sort of choose stupid movies. I don't want to watch Titan AE. Fuck you.